A lot of people seem to be using ChatGPT now, but from what I've seen, very few are actually getting the most out of it. And with AI becoming such an important skill, I thought I'd share how I personally use both ChatGPT and Claude to be more productive. I'll start with the basics and then build up to some of the more advanced techniques so you can hopefully take away something practical for your own workflow. By the way, feel free to skip to either the ChatGPT part or the Claude part if that's only relevant to you. So first, ChatGPT. Now that we have GPT-5, one of the first things to get comfortable with, even if it's much easier than before, is model selection. Most of the time I just leave it on auto, the router mode, and that tends to get it right pretty much most of the time. If the question is simple, it will often use the fast model. If it's more complex, it usually picks the thinking model. For day-to-day stuff though, that's more than enough. That said, I found it's worth being explicit when I know the task needs more thought. That's when I'll switch to the thinking mode. I use it for things like coding, maths, or planning something with a lot of moving parts, but also for more general research and advice. If I want a more nuanced or varied take, something that pulls together sources and digs a little deeper, almost like the old ChatGPT 03 model used to, then thinking mode or the thinking model is usually the better choice. For simpler, more straightforward questions, the fast or auto mode is fine, but when I need more depth, I prefer to make the switch myself. There's also the explicit search toggle. Most of the time, ChatGPT is pretty good at deciding whether to search the web, but sometimes it leans on its own built-in knowledge instead. If I know I'm asking about something timely, for example, I'll turn the toggle on explicitly so I know it's pulling in the latest information. It's just one of those small things that saves me from second guessing later. There's also deep research mode. For times when I want a really detailed investigation, maybe I'm digging into a new topic for a video or just trying to get a proper overview of something, I'll use deep research. It's like a variant of thinking mode, but instead of focusing on step-by-step reasoning, it's more about pulling together a thorough, structured report. I don't use it for everything, but when I do, it can actually be very useful. There's also something called agent mode. I'll be honest, I don't use this too much at the moment, but it's definitely worth being aware of. The idea here is that ChatGPT can go beyond just pulling text or sources from the web. It can actually navigate sites and carry out actions for you. At the moment, I find it to be a bit more of a novelty, but I can definitely see it having real potential and benefit in the future. For example, it can place an order with a delivery service, but realistically that's not much faster than doing it yourself. Where I think it will get more interesting is when it can genuinely save time by finding the best products, comparing options, pulling in various sources, and then booking or buying the product on your behalf. So it's not essential right now, but I definitely keep an eye on it and experiment with it when you get a chance. The next area to focus on is custom instructions and personalities. This is one of the things that I rely on a lot, and the good thing is that you most likely only have to set it up once. Custom instructions let me tell ChatGPT how I like the answers, the style, the level of detail, even little things about how it should approach certain topics. Once it's set, I don't need to keep repeating myself. You set it up once, and generally it will save you time rather than having to constantly prompt your answers after you got the wrong type of response. On top of that, there are a few built-in personalities: cynic, robot, listener, and nerd. They each have their own flavor. Cynic is a bit blunt, robot is efficient and no nonsense, listener is warmer and more reflective, and nerd is enthusiastic and thorough. I've played around with these, and depending on what I'm working on, they can shift the feel of the conversation. Another thing I've been using since it was released is projects. Think of it like folders. I like having different areas of life, work, and all sorts separated and organized. So I've got one for, say, history reading, another one for personal development, and another for work-related tasks, and more. The really nice part is that projects can have shared assets. So if I drop in a document or some notes, all of the chats within that project can reference them. It kind of just keeps everything tidy and saves me from searching back through old conversations. Next, we have custom GPTs. I don't use these every day, but they can be useful and practical and save time, especially if you're using ChatGPT for a specialized purpose. A custom GPT is basically a pre-programmed version of ChatGPT that you or someone else has set up for a specific purpose. So instead of me reprompting it every time to behave like a writing coach, a language coach, or a coding assistant, I can just open up the relevant GPT and it's already set up. Some of them have also added tools and various integrations which can make them even more useful. The next thing to keep in mind is memory and context management. Something I learned early on is that ChatGPT doesn't remember in a way a person does. Every bit of context you include gets rolled into the response. So if you start mixing a lot of different topics in one chat, it can easily get confused. What I do is keep different topics in different chats. If I'm switching from video scripting to, say, learning about history, I'll open a new one. Within a chat, I'll also give a short recap, like we're still on section 2 of the outline. That way it stays on track without me clogging it up with extra context. This is necessary because ChatGPT doesn't really tell you when your context window is getting full or expiring. So if you have a long conversation, it will start to kind of omit the earlier parts of that conversation and continue on where you've left off. So that's why it's sometimes useful to remind the ChatGPT what you've been covering and where you are relative to that starting point. Next, we have prompting techniques, study mode, and canvas. I tend to use an iterative approach. I'll start broad, you ask for an outline on something, then go section by section. And I'll often set a role like, explain this like I'm new to the topic, or if you have no shame, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. It's faster to refine as I go than to expect a perfect answer in one shot. I also use study mode when I'm trying to learn something properly. It will quiz me or walk me through material step by step, which I find keeps me more engaged. And if I'm drafting something, I almost always use Canvas. It's just nicer having that mix of being able to directly edit text myself and also asking ChatGPT to make changes. It feels a bit more like a collaboration. So here are a few kind of smaller tips and tricks, but can be quite useful for productivity gains. The first one is slash commands. Start with the slash instead of clicking through menus like the plus button. It becomes quicker and becomes second nature over time. The next one is to encourage thinking. If you're not on the dedicated thinking mode, especially if you're a free user, you can still say things like think deeply about this or show your reasoning before an answer. This nudges it in the right direction and in the direction of thinking. The other thing is self-critique. I'll often ask, find the flaws in your answer or argument, or list 3 counter-arguments. It's a quick way to test reliability and give a sanity check. Also, keep threads focused, like I mentioned previously. Split unrelated topics into separate chats. It sounds simple, but it does actually make a big difference when it comes to the context. So this video I'm focusing more on the ChatGPT and Claude specifics rather than general AI and prompting advice. I will be making a video in the coming weeks on how to effectively prompt and prompt engineer in order to get the best results regardless of which AI system you're using. But for now, let's move on to Claude. Claude, in my opinion, has a different feel to it, and I tend to use it when I want more depth or anything coding related. The first thing to know is the styles. There are several built-in ones: normal, learning, concise, explanatory, and formal. They're fairly self-explanatory overall. Concise keeps things brief, explanatory goes in depth, and so on. I often use explanatory when I want a more reasoned breakdown, or concise if I just want a quick summary. And you can create your own styles in the settings too, a bit like how you set up custom instructions in ChatGPT. Now, in terms of model selection within Claude, if you're on the paid plan, you get Claude Sonnet 4, which is both fast and efficient, and Claude Opus 4.1, which is better for more demanding tasks like coding or heavy reasoning. There's also an extended thinking toggle, which I use when I want it to take more time planning before giving the final answer. It works a lot like ChatGPT's thinking mode. There's also research toggle. Like ChatGPT's deep research, Claude has a research option too. I'll switch it on if I'm looking for a more thorough information gathering run. It just signals to Claude that I want depth rather than speed. Another area where Claude is strong is integrations. You can connect it to Gmail, Google Calendar, and even external services like PayPal or Canva. Some of these use MPC connections under the hood, but the main point is that you can extend what Claude can do beyond just chat. And I kind of see this as something that will happen across the board with many AI systems. It's not just about gathering information and retrieving it, it can actually do some kind of agentic actions. Next, one of the more unique features is artifacts. These are interactive outputs, like a formatted document, a diagram, or even a simple app that appear alongside the conversation. I find them especially useful because Claude is particularly strong at coding and design. A lot of the artifacts people create are essentially mini apps or visually polished tools, and they work so well precisely because Claude is so good at combining code with functional, appealing layouts. It's a nice way of turning what could have been just text into something that you can actually use. It's also worth pointing out that Claude also has projects, which I use in a similar way to ChatGPT. It just keeps things organized. If I know I'll want to come back to a particular theme, like a research project or a set of meeting notes, I'll keep it in its own project so I can pick up where I left off. Where I find Claude shines is in the long form tasks though, like summarizing research papers, generating clear meeting notes, or helping me prioritize using tools like the Eisenhower matrix, for example. It also works well as a reflective coach. I'll sometimes ask it questions like, what might I be overlooking here, just to get a second perspective. Think of it like a more analytical tool than a general purpose one like ChatGPT. So that's it for the main Claude platform, which is fairly simple overall, but I am going to make a dedicated video on Claude Code, which has a lot of kind of subtleties and nuances that can really increase the output and quality of your code using that CLI tool. So definitely stay tuned for that. But if you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you can like and subscribe. Also, I do have a weekly newsletter, which is completely free. So look at the description if you're interested in signing up for that. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.